So, on the homework last night, who potentially struggled? I would too. It's hard. It's not easy stuff. And we had not done problems exactly like that yet. That's going to happen sometimes as you go through your educational career, where like teachers want to push you and see what you're able to do and see like where is that point where you're like, oh, screw it, I'm out. Or do you persevere and push through? Or do you come and seek help? Do you find those answers somewhere else? Do you do some research to figure it out? So, yesterday during extension, somebody came to me and they said, this doesn't, like, can you check this out? This doesn't, like, it's just not working right. And there was, I wish I could remember the exact problem, but there was a problem where you ended up with, if you canceled out the variables, you ended up with.
Should I give you the exact problem?
Sure, if you have it written down still.
Negatives in parentheses x minus 3 is lesser than 3 minus x.
So if you did last night's homework, you should recognize this. So the first thing we would do is the distributive property here, right? So we distribute the opposite to the x and the negative 3. So we get negative x and positive 3 is less than. Now what you should recognize here, you have the exact same thing on both sides. A negative x and a negative x. A positive 3 and a positive 3. So if I try to get rid of this x, well then that, I end up with, is this true? No. And therefore, there is no solution, which we've talked about this symbol. It's either the no solution or empty set, which an empty set is a no solution. So that symbol means what you started with is not true. It is not solvable. It's impossible. So from the get-go, this was actually not solvable. It's not a solvable inequality. It's not true. Now, if I did something like then plus 8 or plus another x, or so, like if I change what's on one of the sides, then I could make a true inequality. But with what we start with, this is not a true inequality. It does not work. So you see that in this slide. If we had to distribute first, still, we would distribute and get 2x minus 2. Now I have variables and constants on both sides. So from there, we choose which side we want what on. And there's no right or wrong here. I like variables being on the left side. So I often try to put my variables on the left side. Sometimes I do it differently just depending on which ones are bigger. But notice the 3x is bigger than the 2x. Another trick is it's easiest, not right versus wrong, but easiest if you put your variables on the side that start with the biggest variable. So we decide that this is going to be our variable side. So we want to get this variable to that side. We'll do that in a second. So we want to get this constant to this side. Because if that's my variable side, this has to be my constant side. So I move my constants first, then I move my variables, and I get my answer. So that's the type of process that you want to follow if you're still working through 8.4. Nobody texted or called or emailed or anything to me last night. The only person that asked me for help was in extensions. So I'm honest, thank you for coming to ask for help. I was waiting to see how you guys would attack those problems. Any other questions from last night? Go once and twice. And because tonight is problem solving, you will see a lot more like word type problems that might not be as much of like solve the problem, but set up what the situation is describing. So the Friday night math club, you got to be a really big nerd to be in a Friday night math club, but I would do it, wants to beat last year's drive of $40.25. They need to work on their fundraising, it seems like. The superstar runner are Johnny, who's been an awesome runner, awesome bowler. He's just awesome at everything. He decides to show his support by buying 2 mugs. So far, we've sold 2 coffee mugs. Write and solve an inequality to show how many more mugs the club needs to sell to beat last year's total. So this is the sort of stuff that you're going to see on your homework last night. Set up a situation to represent, bless you, the sales that are happening this year beating last year. So try this on your own. You can talk with a neighbor close by you if you want to compare results, but try to write out an inequality. You don't have to solve it right yet, but just write out where we would start.
Wait, they only sell mugs?
That's all they're selling is the coffee mugs. That's what they sell. So like if we, let's say because Hot Chocolate Cub, if we decided to sell hot chocolate mugs for people, like that would be all we would sell. You think you got it? So, what did you think through as you set this up?
Alright, so I thought that they already have two $350 mugs.
Yeah, so we have an amount that we've already sold.
So it's 350 times 2 plus.
So I'm going to think this out verbally first. So don't give me the numbers yet. So we have what we've already sold, and then what else are we going to have?
How much they sell.
Yeah, plus the sales that have yet to be made, like future sales.
And then that has to be greater than 40. That has to be greater than last year's.
Boom. So then give me the numbers.
So it's 350 times 2 plus 350 is greater than 425.
Any questions on how we set this up?
Instead of writing 2 times 350, could you just write it as 7?
Yeah, you can just simplify. So the next thing I would do is simplify that this is 7 plus 350m is greater than 40.25. I would take away that 7 from both sides. And I'm actually just not going to show that, at least right at the moment. I might go back and show that. Drop down. That would be 33. And when we go to get the m by itself, Inish, what's the last thing we do here?
We divide it by 30.
We divide by 350 on both sides, and we would get,
9.5.
what'd you get?
I'm pretty sure it's 9.5.
9.5. So what's that actually mean? How many mugs do they need to sell, Inish?
We really need at least 9.
Will 9 be more than 9.5? Yeah, so they need to sell 10 or more. So when we look at this as our answer, what that actually tells me is we need to sell 10 or more to beat the total. Like 10 or more beyond what Johnny already bought. Nah. That did not capture. I apologize for anybody that might be using the notes. My orientation was apparently off, and I hit clearing instead of capture. So when we look at example 1 here, it tells me write a 1-step and a 2-step that both have the solution of x is greater than 5. Now wait, what? So we are now being asked to play the math teacher. It's now your job to make the problem that would then have the answer of x is greater than 5. So we're now switching roles essentially. So when you think about how math teachers do this stuff, like we don't just like pull it out of thin air. If I know what answer I want x is greater than 5 to be my end. But what I'm wondering is what happened to get me there, and where did I start that I did something to get me there? So instead of solving through the process working down, I'm essentially working backwards. So if the first thing I want to do is a 1-step, Monica, do you have an idea?
Yeah, you can just do something like multiply one side by a number and do the same thing to the other side.
Give me a number. 5. Can we use not 5 because we're already using 5?
9.
9. There we go. So, Monis says, as I go backwards through my process, what if I multiply by 9 on both sides? That would then give me what?
9x is greater than 45.
So then, to check, does this actually work? If this is what I start with, how do I solve it?
Divide by
The opposite of what Monis had just told me to do. So if you want to build an equation or an inequality, you do the same thing as when we're solving. Just do something on both sides. So if this is our one-step inequality that solves out to be what they wanted, I challenge you to write a two-step. Take this one step and make it into a two-step. Like it would take 2 steps to solve. So take a second. If we already did like multiplication division, think about what else there is that we can do to tweak those sides. Colin, what are you deciding to do to both sides to give it one more step in the solution process?
Multiply, find out the value of x.
So that would be if we were trying to solve it. We already actually have the answer that x will be greater than 5. So what we're actually trying to do is build a problem that solves to that answer. So we built a one-step problem where if I divide by 9 on both sides, I get this answer. And Manasa did that by multiplying by 9. We want to do something else that adds another step into the problem. Do you have an idea, Colin, or do you want to move on? Move on. Sean, what do you think? Andrew?
Added 5 to the 9.
Perfect! If we add 5, then we add 5, and my new equation, inequality becomes 9x plus 5 is greater than 50. When we go to solve this, we'd work the solution just like we're used to. Subtract 5, subtract 5. That would give me 9x is greater than 45. Well, that's the equation that I had. Then, to solve this the rest of the way, I divide by 9. You don't have to write this process out, because all it shows me is exactly what I wanted. So we've now created a two-step inequality with this as our solution. Any questions on how we did that? It is easiest if we multiply first, because I want to show you another way that this can get a little tricky. If you're really taking good notes, I'd grab a Post-it so that you can write this other way, or if you still have some space on your paper left, that is awesome. But if I was you, I would not. I would not have any space left. So let's say that we start with the x is greater than 5. What if I add first? So let's do this process in reverse. Andrew told me add 5. I'm getting hot, guys. Right, turn this on. It is warm in here. So if I add 5 first, so this would then become, come on, don't break it up. Yeah, so if I add 5, I have x plus 5, and then 5 plus 5, greater than 10. You all with me? We just did the addition step first. But now if I jumped over to Manasa, and she told me to multiply by 9, here's where this is dangerous. We now decide I'm going to multiply by 9. It's 9 times the entire side. And 9 times the entire side. This becomes 9x plus 45 is greater than 90. So the order in which you... Now this is still true. But the order in which you do things... No, it doesn't. I mean, it changes what it does. So here, we multiplied, then we added. Here, we added, then we multiplied. Both are right. But that way is easier. because you don't have to distribute the multiplication. So if you're building equations or inequalities, my advice is multiply first, then do any arithmetic, like the addition subtraction. So in the got it, try to write an inequality, and you can decide whether you want to do a two-step or a one-step. Write an inequality that has a solution of n is less than or equal to 8. And actually, I'd like you to then have a neighbor check that it's right. So you're only going to hand them your inequality. Like, don't hand them the whole process and the whole work. You're only going to hand them the inequality, have them check, is it right? So take like a minute or two, and then I'll ask for a couple up here, and we'll talk about them. So if you're struggling, stick up a hand so I can help you. Once you build it, trade it with a neighbor. So, just like what we did up here, either of the process. Excuse me, you just want to choose something to do to both sides. And really, there's no wrong answer. You can multiply, you can divide, you can add, you can subtract. So, what do you want to do to both sides to start making this more complex? Sure, we want to multiply by 4. So we multiply this by 4. You get 4 is less than or equal. What's this one? Yep. So then if you want to make it even more complicated, you can add something to both sides, or you can subtract something to both sides. But then once you get there, like hand it off the scale and have to check, is it right? Would it actually solve out to be n is less than or equal to 8? Are you finding any mistakes in people's work?
No.
This just made it
Insanely?
Yeah. Yeah, big numbers.
Oh, it doesn't make it like that.
There's no bad.
So subtract. So you get 336. That divided by 42 is 8. I'm going to use yours, Anish. So, Anish kind of annoyed Ozzy. Anish ended up with an inequality that was, give it to me, dude.
42n plus 4,326.
I love it.
Less than or equal to 4,662.
Now, this is like when I'm making your math tests. Like, Anish, you could be a good evil teacher someday. So, it doesn't matter what numbers you use, as long as you just use some numbers and do the process accurately. So, Mr. Smith, what would be the first thing I would do to start solving this? If I divide by 42, I would divide here and there, and that's quite complicated. We don't start with a multiplication division. We always start by undoing the addition or subtraction. That was a big eraser. So, and this is not hard. It just looks scary. It's no harder than if this was a 3 and this was a 4. Like, it's not more difficult. It's just bigger numbers. So, we undo the addition by subtracting.
336.
We get 336 on the right side. Sorry. I was going to set a booby trap, but then I decided not to. That becomes 42n. When we do the division, does it come out to be 8?
Yep.
That's the question. So, what Anish did is accurate. As long as we get the answer that we were hoping for, it's good. Anybody have questions on whether theirs is good or not? Otherwise, we're going to move on. You all right? You just back your comb.
Yeah, I'm still
Just how you're comfortable. Okay, again, I hit clear accidentally. So, again, our homework's going to be a lot like these sort of word problems. So now a salesperson has to decide whether or not to accept a job offer. They have a base salary of $35,000, which is just under what I made my first year teaching. A bonus of 18% of the money he makes in sales. So that's really important when we're highlighting things. You can't just highlight the 18% because it's 18% of what? Of what he makes in sales. And his current job pays him $54,000. But, hey, we okay back there, guys? Does his current job have any bonuses? No, all it pays him is $54,000. So how much money will he have to make in sales? So here's our question. What will he have to make in sales to earn more money in his new job? Try to set this up and go ahead and try to do the solution if you can. Do not look up at the board. I'm going to take a lap, see if anyone needs help. Then I'm going to start writing. Clear this out for people so you can put books and stuff up here, but then whatever else needs a different one. Right, I'm going to take these shelves out too. I only left the top shelves because people told me to so they could put their books down there. Actually, no, I'm not going to start writing. You guys are going to help me out. If you can. So, Elena, when you start looking at what he's going to make at the new job, because we want the new job has to be more than the old, right? That's what we need. New has to be better than old. What does he make at the new job? $35,000 and so how would I represent that? Yeah, 0.18 times, sure. X is the money he makes in sales. You could use M or S or whatever you want to. X is a good one because it's our favorite. What do you mean? These are two different jobs. So, like, this is where he works right now. He's got an offer to change jobs and work at this new one. The new one, chill, might pay more. It might not, because the new job has a bonus of your sales. So like we talked about commission, right? Commission is what you get based off what you sell. So maybe his new job is selling cars. If he gets 18% of car sales, that's a lot of money. But if his new job is selling watches, that's not as expensive. If his new job is selling donuts, I doubt you're going to make all that much money. But it depends. So what we're trying to solve is what does he need to sell in his sales to make more than what he had previously? Julian, what is the first thing that I want to do here?
Subtract the 35,000.
Yeah, get rid of that 35,000 and figure out what does he need to make in commission. So our 18% of X is greater than Ozzy? 19,000. We divide by the 18%.
And you get 105,555.55.
Hold on, I'm not even writing it yet. 105,000.
555.5556.
So it's money. We round up right there. So let's think about this. This is in a year, right? So let's say he went to sell cars. My buddy at CarMax, except they don't make commission, they just make straight peg. So, in a year, 12 months, let's figure out what he would need to sell per month. So we could divide this by 12, right? What's 105,000 divided by 12?
8,796.
8,000, so like $9,000, right? Do you think a car salesman could sell $9,000 worth of cars in a month?
Yes.
That's like a car. That's like a car.
That's like half a work.
That's like a half or a third or a fourth of depending on what type of car you're looking at. That like $9,000 is a car. So if he doesn't suck at his job, and let's just be honest here, he should be able to make that much. But like we said, now if he's selling watches, how many watches would it take to sell $9,000 worth of items? A lot. So it depends on what the job is. But he would have to make over $105,000 in sales in order to beat the previous job.
It wouldn't take that long to make one car a month. We would have
Try this on your own. I agree with you.
And watches,
We-
you probably hit $9,000 too.
Depending on how nice a watch is. I mean, I sold watches for a while, and it's hard to sell thousands of dollars worth. No, Macy's doesn't carry Rolex. I'm not going to highlight anything. I want to see what you guys can do on your own. Anybody have issues? You may work with people close by if you like. Noah, when you started setting this up, what'd you think? Don't give me any numbers yet. Just what'd you think? Yeah, we want over or more than $1,000. Now, what is it that we want over 1,000? Yeah, your account, right? So if I were to set this up verbally first, I'd say I want the account over $1,000. And you could just say total or whatever, but since we already know the $1,000 checkpoint, we can just leave it there. So then what'd you do now?
We do 375.80 plus 10% or 0.10 times 865.
Here's the interesting part here. She earns $865 each week and deposits 10% of that check into the account. So can we figure out how much she deposits each week?
Yeah.
Can we, talking with Noah, can we figure out how much she deposits each week? Yeah, how do we do that? Yeah, and that 10% just shifts your decimal. So that would actually be $86.50 that she puts in each week. So really what I want to add here is the $86.50. What? Gosh, you about leapt out of your seat, Ozzy. Times the number of, what are you representing there? Weeks. This is not a commission-based problem. This is, we know she's putting the same amount in every week. Over and over, this thing happens. So, then to start solving, Jaslyn, what would be the first thing that we would do here? Yeah, now, here's the tricky part with how this is set up. What do we subtract here? Thank you. please be careful. This is where people say, oh, it's after the addition sign, this is what I subtract. No! You subtract what constant is being added on. This constant here, we subtract from both sides. Sorry, I did not line up my decimals. Then we get that 8650 times RW will be greater than
624.20.
624.20. Anish, we then?
And you divide it, and then you get like W equals like 8 weeks, because they really just 7.2 weeks.
Hold on. So wait, our real answer is W is greater than
7.2.
7.2. So then, when we talk about it in actual terms,
Yeah, 8 weeks.
yeah, she could, like, after 8 weeks, she will have more than $1,000. So it could be 8, or 9, or 10, or 40, or 700. It's anything over 7.2. Now, every year people like to say, well, what about 7.5, or what about 7.3? You don't get paid constantly. You only get paid week to week. At most, it's weekly. Most places are bi-weekly. They do it every other week. And when I worked for Otterbein, Julie's not in this class, Otterbein only pays monthly. So some places literally only give you one paycheck a month. Yeah. So like in Worthington, we get paid on the 10th and the 24th of every month. So we get paid twice a month. They actually voted to change that because most people's bills go out on either the 15th of the month or the end of the month. Because they either go out in the middle or... So our pay used to be on the 1st and the 15th. But that's really annoying if your bills are due on the 1st and the 15th. I'd rather be paid before my bills are due and have extra money in my account. So we voted to change when we got paid. So you guys should know about this from our Phoenix Fair. Revenue is the amount of money a company receives for goods and services. What did you guys call that when we talked about Phoenix Fair? Ooh, careful. What's gross versus net? Who can explain that to me? Gross versus net. Did you guys talk about gross? What do you... not really.
It's not
As long as you know what income means. So, gross. When you gross money, let's say I went to Phoenix Fair and I sold, let's say I sold these tables, right? Over this year I make some more tables and next year I sell them. Would my supplies that I used have been free? No, I had to buy the wood, buy the stain, buy the poly, buy paintbrushes. So as I start selling them, let's say I sell them for 20 bucks a piece. I sell that for 20 bucks, that for 20 bucks, that for 20 bucks. I've now made 60 bucks. But is that all profit? No. So I have grossed $60. But what I net is how much profit, like how much I make on top of my expenses. So your net profit is what you get after you pay off your bills. So revenue is what you get. Revenue is my $60. But then you have to take away the cost to figure out profit. So to make profit, revenue must be greater than cost. So revenue must be greater than cost because profit is your revenue minus your cost. If you don't have enough revenue to be bigger than your costs, your profit will be negative, and that's going to mean that you lost money. So this is one of those real life inequalities. To make money, you got to have a revenue greater than your cost. Now, if you wanted to break even, how would I change this? Tom? Could be equal. If it's equal, then I break even. So now, you don't have to write that because this says must be greater. So I'm just showing this so that you see this would be called our break-even point. Where my revenue equals my cost, that's called the break-even point. We didn't make money, we didn't lose money. So, who likes applesauce? Pretty awesome. An applesauce company's revenue is given by this equation. Their cost, they know their cost. why might we not know revenue? If I'm a food company and I know how much it costs me to make the food, why might I not know my revenue? Andrew?
People don't know if people are gonna buy or not.
Yeah, you don't know if your stuff is going to sell. I can make these great granola bars. Doesn't mean that anyone buys them. So the applesauce company spent $5 million, $204,000, on making all of their applesauce. Their revenue is represented by this equation. We need to figure out for what value of U will our company make profit. So in order to make profit, what do we know? What did we just write up there? In order to make profit, Ellie?
You must, or if the, you must have the revenue subtracted with that.
Oh, so that's how we find our profit.
Sorry, okay. Revenue must be greater than.
Yeah, to make profit, this must be true. So if this isn't true, we don't make any profit, and we might as well just pack up and go home. So to do this, we set up our equation, 7,000 times U minus 9 plus 234,000 has to be greater than 5,204,000. There are multiple ways to solve this. I want to show you the easiest. Ozzy, what were you thinking you would do first?
Take the 7,000 and then divide that, divide it by itself.
Here's the only problem with that. I like your thinking, but here's the issue. If I divide by 7,000, that happens here, and here, and here.
First, get rid of the.
Yeah, so we can first get rid of this constant value, because remember, we always want to deal with constants first. Now, you could have done what else first? Another option that you have,
Distribute.
Katie.
You could combine the 7,000
Yeah, so we distribute here, right? So we can do this math, but that wouldn't help me solve anything. That would just rewrite this in a different way. So if I want to work towards solving, start getting rid of values. So now we have the 7,000. U minus 9 is greater than 4,000,000.
970,000.
Wait, 970?
Second.
907 or 970?
970.
Making sure we say things properly. Remember, there's no and until you get to the decimal point. So that's 4,970,000. No and anywhere in there. Now, Ozzy, now we can divide that 7,000 because I don't want to distribute it. I'm lazy or I'm efficient. That will give me that U minus 9 has to be greater than
710.
710. Last thing we do, anybody. Plus 9 on both sides. U is greater than 719. So U would represent their units sold. So they need to, in order to make profit, sell what?
720.
So they need to sell 720 or more to make profit. If they sell 719, they break even. They didn't make money, didn't lose money. But if they sell 720, they've now made profit. It's probably not very much, but they made profit. Now, here, a unit is probably like a crate of applesauce. So, like, did I tell you guys about my sister-in-law just got a job at the Ohio Grocers Association. Any food that goes on your shelf, like in the grocery store, has to go through this association. So, and I'm not 100% certain, but I feel like it kind of works like they approve the food and like buy it and then give it to the grocery stores. So it's one of these like really weird, how your food gets to you has a big old process, but most of the time that store is not buying cans of soup. They're buying pallets full of cans of soup. So we're not talking small quantities. This is why this is 7,000 times this value. It's probably $7,000 per like crate or per like whatever thing a unit is. Any questions on that one? Does all of this seem to make sense? The processes we've been taking, inverse operations, how some things are easier but it doesn't make it right versus wrong. Any last questions remaining about any of this? Because I don't think we need to do this last one. We're running out of time, so I don't want to cram it in. So here's the deal. Tomorrow, we're going to work on the mastery. If you're not done with 9-5, that will be forgiven. Like, it needs to be done at some point. If you can get it done tonight, that would be best. But you need to be done up through 9-4. Cool? We all understand? All right. Thank you guys. Have a wonderful day.